Hi there, and welcome back to It's Not Rocket Science 5 Questions Over Coffee. I have in front of me my coffee mug. I hope Arup has his drink with him, whether or not it's coffee or something else. But I'd love to welcome Arup Biswas. Arup is the founder of something called Klaxon AI, which I'm hoping we will learn more about in the next 15, 20 minutes. But from initial introduction, I'll say that Klaxon AI is one of those game-changing type AI systems that really should be shaking up the podcast advertising, media advertising landscape, enabling us all to produce those really game-changing ads cheaper, faster, and with more specificity. So, Arup, welcome to It's Not Rocket Science 5 Questions Over Coffee.
Thank you, Stuart. I'm delighted to be here.
Terrific. Well, let's start with who the ideal audience for Klaxon AI is. What's the sort of characteristics that anybody who's listening to us at the moment might be thinking, well, I wonder if this is for me?
Yeah, well, there are three key audiences for what we do. And I should say that actually, yes, we are an AI business, of course, but actually it's all about the outcome for the customer. And the outcome for the customer is reaching people effectively in a powerful way. So our core market is marketing agencies that are already working with clients, but offering traditional marketing methods, recruitment agencies who may be looking to recruit volume numbers of staff, and owners of SMEs. So those business owners who are struggling hard to make their business a success, but I've always thought that radio advertising in particular has been out of their reach because of lack of knowledge or price, cost. Those kind of traditional factors have always been the issue. So that's our traditional market. That's our marketplace that we focus on. And our solution is all about helping them overcome those issues. And we created a solution which we think does all that.
And let's just sort of understand that. I mean, you talked about the fact that it's a solution. So what are the sort of problems that you noticed that you were trying to solve with this? Obviously, cost is one, but there must be a bunch of other things that you're looking at this solution in AI that will actually help solve.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest issues, other than price is always an issue for small business owners, is knowledge and technical expertise. Particularly when it comes to broadcast advertising, whether it's TV or radio. People think, and traditionally this has been the case, so this is completely justified why people think this way. You need to go to a recording studio, you need a sound engineer, you need a voiceover artist, you need to create a script. And traditionally, the cost of creating an audio advert has been thousands and thousands of pounds. Typically, a recording studio can be upwards of £300 an hour to just hire the recording studio. So the costs are really high, but also the technical expertise. If you're a business owner running whatever your business is, how much do you actually know about creating a radio advert? You think you might have to outsource that, but it's not typically something you think you can do yourself. So there are high barriers to entry to get into radio advertising, and there traditionally always has been high barriers to entry. So when we came up with the concept for doing this, and I should say myself and my co-founder, we come from a media background, so we were very experienced in working with small business owners who were looking to promote their businesses in normal marketing ways, but struggled with things like broadcast advertising. So we came at it from a problem point of view of how do we make it easier for these business owners to get their message out via radio advertising and increasingly podcast advertising. So we know the pain. We see the pain every day, and historically the pain's been there. So what we've done is create a system which removes every barrier to entry. And we'll talk a little bit more about what we offer, but essentially one of the services we offer is a self-serve advert creation system where anybody can go in and create a professional audio advert with no technical expertise in less than 5 minutes. So that's what we've tried to do, is remove barriers to entry.
So let's just deal into that, and I guess we're going to get into some of the sort of the offerings and services that you've got, and I hope that there's going to be a valuable offer, a piece of advice that you'd like to give to the audience. But let me just explore for a moment. I mean, how does this system work? What does the business owner do to solve the problem they've got, having sort of looked at the cost of this and thought this is going to be too expensive for me to be able to sort of put a radio advert, a podcast advert, TV advert, whatever, out this might be a solution to it. What's the steps that they take? What are the different services you offer?
Yeah, well, the first thing to say is when we talk to business owners is to forget everything they know about creating radio adverts, because most of us, or most people, come to this thinking expensive, technically complex, all those kind of things. As I said, we've created a system that removes all that. So we've got two services. One is a self-serve system that I mentioned, where anybody can go in, they can just write a few words of text. We use AI to create a script for the company owner or the marketing executive. So you just need to put in a few words about your business. For example, ABC is a marketing company that works in Chester. Our AI will automatically create a 30-second advert script using that text, or you can put in the exact text that you want to be read out. What happens is our system automatically creates the script, automatically adds an AI voice, and these are high quality AI voices. We use the best AI voices in the industry. You would never know it's an AI voice, and we add background music to it as well, and we package it up as a 30-second advert. Now that process is super quick. Anybody can go into the site now, they can do it now, and they'll see that they'll have an advert there to listen to literally within less than a minute, no more than 5 minutes if they want to translate it, because we offer a translation facility as well. So that's fine. They could do that, and then they can download the advert, do whatever they want with it. But what we also know is quite often somebody will produce something like an audio file and they won't know what to do with it. It's great having an advert on your desktop, or what the hell do you do with it? So what we do is we don't see ourselves so much as a tech company. We see ourselves as a full service tech and advertising agency. So we offer what we call a fully managed service, where we'll create the advert for the client for the same cost. It's the same low cost. So we'll create the advert for the client, and then we work with our media partners. So we have media partnerships with the largest radio station owners in the UK and the world's largest podcast advertising network. And these are companies that own every commercial radio station you've heard of, the big ones, Heart, Great Hits Radio, LBC, Capital, Jazz FM, Classic FM, all the ones you've heard of, which get millions and millions of listeners every week. And we partner with those guys to actually broadcast the advert for the client. So we offer a full one-stop shop solution where the client can just say to us, yes, create the advert for us, and we want it broadcast in Chester in September for 2 weeks, and we want to target a particular demographic. Now, because more and more people are listening to radio adverts, not on traditional radios, but on what you call connected devices, smart speakers, phones, game stations, Alexas, all those kind of things. That gives you a lot of data about who's listening. And because the media owners have that data, we can target really effectively. So nowadays, if a business owner says to us, oh, my target audience is Eastbourne, for example, but I only want to target 45-year-old business owners in Eastbourne within a 10-mile radius of Eastbourne, and they have to be female business owners, we can do that. We could target exactly that audience through our media partners and deliver the advert exactly to that audience. So nobody else other than those target audience people will hear the advert, which makes the advertising spend really effective, of course. So what we do for the client is we create the advert, we manage the broadcast for them, we get it broadcast on air, and we send them analytics at the end of it. So, and obviously they can hear the advert when it's live on air. So we offer a full service solution.
And I think it's really important to sort of emphasize in this, if it's not become very obvious, that makes this really very, very cost effective, doesn't it? Because you're not paying for the normally 95% of people who don't want to hear your message. You're targeting the very specific people that that you have a solution to their problem, and therefore that advert becomes extremely relevant and very much more targeted.
That's right. And actually, some of the campaigns we've already run for clients, they've been very targeted campaigns. So we've got one coming up actually in the next couple of weeks, which is targeting business owners in Birmingham. And it's just targeting Birmingham city centre. So like a couple of mile radius of Birmingham city centre. It's only targeting business owners because that's who the advertiser wants to target. We can even set the age range. If they only want to target business owners over 25, for example, we could do that. So yeah, it makes it very effective. And it means you're not wasting your ad spend on people hearing your advert who aren't in your target audience. So why waste money doing that?
Terrific. So that brings me on to the sort of third question. Is there a piece of advice, an offer, something that you can give to the audience listening at the moment, the people watching us on YouTube, LinkedIn, who might say, well, this sounds like it's interesting. So how do I get some advice from this guy and understand whether or not this is for me?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would do is I'd say look at one of the challenges is people often think that radio listenership in particular is declining. They know podcast listenership is increasing because podcasts are booming massively around the world, but they think radio listenership generally is declining. And that's not the case at all. Radio listenership is really, really strong in the UK and around the world. So in terms of free advice, free resources, I would tell people to go to a couple of the industry websites. These are completely industry official websites. One is called radiocentre.org, which is kind of the voice of the radio industry in the UK. The second one is a site called Rajar, rajar.co.uk, which is run by the BBC and the Radio Centre, which gives the stats on how many people are listening to different radio stations. So if you go there, and even if you look for your local radio station, so you might want to know how many people are listening to Heart Radio in your part of the world, you can go there and you can see the actual stats of how many people are listening to Heart Radio in your area, so you'll know how big the audience is. The second bit of advice I'd give, and this may sound a bit self-serving, is just go onto our website, go into register for our free advert creation service. There's no cost to create the advert. The only cost is if you want to download the advert at the end of the process, but you don't have to do that. If you just want to go in, have a look, see how it works, actually create an advert yourself, see how it sounds, do that. Go in there, have a play with it, see how easy it is to create a professional audio advert. And that will make you very familiar and comfortable with knowing it's really easy now. You don't need the traditional ways of creating adverts now. What we've done is created a disruptive way to create a professional audio ad cheaply and quickly.
So anybody who's just tried to sort of write down all of that information, I can promise you, and I've put it on screen now, if you go to our vault, which is Systemize, systemize.me/free-stuff, that's systemize.me/free-stuff. All of those links that Arup has just mentioned will be there. You don't have to try and write them down. Just remember systemize.me/free-stuff. Dead easy. Go on that. Pick up all of that links. Pick up all of the information that we've got, and we'll be able to direct you to all of that stuff that Arup has just mentioned, and that will save you having to try and remember a lot of information, which is actually going to help you to understand exactly how you can create these adverts, low cost, highly targeted, very relevant to the person who has a problem that you can solve for them. And if that doesn't bring in leads, then nothing else will. Arup, you've mentioned a little bit about how you sort of began your journey towards this. You were obviously in the media world yourself. Was there a moment, a book, a course, a meeting, something which sort of struck you as, okay, I've got a solution to a problem. I need to start telling the world about this. What brought you to who you are at the moment, as it were?
Yeah, well, as I said, myself and my co-founder, Mark, we come from the media sector. And actually, we both started off as traditional newspaper journalists back in the day when newspaper readership was huge. So we started in the media sector. We moved into different areas of media operations in terms of managing news websites and operations, those kind of things. But we worked quite closely with advertising teams in our media companies. So we were working with colleagues who would working with local businesses who are looking to promote themselves via, in those days, it was all newspaper advertising. You'll remember, Stuart, back in the day, all the job listings weren't on Indeed, they were in your local paper, and all their property listings.
I don't remember those times. I'm only 21.
I'm obviously older than you.
21 and a few months. I just haven't counted the number of months recently.
But trust me, I'm going to say in the old days, job listings, property listings, they're all in your local paper. That's where you would go. Thursday used to be job paper day. You'd get the paper on a Thursday, and that's where your jobs were. Wednesday was for property. Now all that has moved online. But working with commercial teams in media organizations, like I said, we understood how SME owners, business owners were evolving what they wanted to do. There were Google AdWords was a new thing at the time. The power of advertising online became a new thing, and more were shifting away from traditional print advertising into online advertising. But there was a growing band who wanted to go further and wanted to do things like radio advertising, but there just wasn't the capability to do it at low cost, easy to easy to use and understand way. And it hasn't been for years. We set up to solve that problem, to fix that problem. We knew AI could solve that problem, and we built our own system to enable us to do it. So we have our own proprietary system that uses AI. Now, if you're into AI, yeah, it's fine, it's exciting. But if you just focus on the outcome of, I want to reach potential large audiences in a really effective and powerful way, radio advertising and podcast advertising is number one. And actually, it's not me saying that. Numerous bodies, including the Guardian newspaper and Tapestry Research, they did some analysis a few years ago about the effectiveness of podcast advertising, for example. And what they found was podcast advertising it's the most effective form of advertising around, much more effective than online advertising, a lot more effective than TV advertising. And actually, what they found in their in-depth analysis and research was 52% of podcast listeners who heard an advert in a podcast wanted to buy something from the brand. 38% of people who heard an advert on radio wanted to buy something from the brand. And there's a whole stack of literature about the science of audio and the fact it goes in your ear and it sticks in your brain and you digest it and it works its way into your brain in a different way to things you see visually, for example. So there's a lot of science about how audio is the most effective method of getting a message in your brain, and also the most effective method of advertising and getting the customers to recall your brand, recall your message, and go onto your website and make a purchase.
Terrific. I'm very aware of the fact that you've given a huge amount of very detailed answers to questions that I've given you, but probably I've not yet asked you the one question that I should have asked, and that's probably my fault for having not realized there's an important question here. But there must be one important question that you keep thinking, when's he going to ask this really, really important question? So I'm going to ask you now to tell me what that question was. And obviously, as you know what the question is, you're also going to have to answer it for me because I can't answer that question.
That's fine. Well, I guess a really obvious question is, what do I do with an advert? And I know it sounds really obvious because we've been talking about advertising on radio. We've been talking about advertising in podcasts. And absolutely, create the advert. That's where it'll go. That's where you're going to get your biggest audience when it's broadcast on radio or broadcast in podcast. However, an audio advert doesn't have to be just used in that way. There's lots of other things you can do with an audio advert. You can stick it on your website. You can stick it in your newsletters. You can stick it on your email. You can use it on social media. So if you never want it to go out on radio, or you don't think you can afford the cost of it going out on radio or podcast, doesn't mean that an audio advert won't be effective. It will be effective, and there's lots of ways you can use it. So, if you don't want it on Heart FM or Great Hits Radio or in a podcast or whatever, fine. Use it on your website. Use it on your in your blog section if you've got one. Use it in your emails. Use it on social media. People still digest it in the same way. It's still going in through people's ears. They're still hearing the message. It's just a different medium that's going out. So that's the one thing I think people should really understand, that using our system or using any system to create an advert doesn't necessarily mean you have to broadcast it on radio. An audio file, an audio advert can be used in lots of different ways, and it's a powerful mechanism, whichever way they use.
And now it's as cost effective as you described, Arup. There's no reason not to do 5, 6, 7 of them and use them in different ways, different channels, where there'll be different audiences. I'm always very keen on talking to business owners who are sort of unsure about whether or not they should target and get very much more niche in there, trying to solve particular problems. And I keep saying to them, the niche person is the one that actually, it's where the money is really made. So actually creating a very niche advert might sound like a really a crazy idea, but actually it's the one which is probably going to be the most effective in bringing the person that has a problem that you solve to get to know who you are and start to know and trust you. And it's a much more effective way of doing it by something as simple as creating an audio advert like you're describing than it is by blasting a message to the entire world and hoping, which is just a very ineffective strategy.
Yeah, and with our services, there's two ways to look at that. One is, as I said, with the radio advertising, it can be really targeted at who you want to reach and the demographics. But podcast advertising is a really interesting space. I mean, everyone will know how big podcasts are getting. They're huge globally, in the UK and globally. But with podcasts, obviously, it's a bit like websites. There's podcasts for everything, and podcasts for very niche subjects. So if you want a podcast just on marketing, you'll come to your podcast, Stuart. But if you want a podcast on business growth, your business growth podcast will come to you. If you want one on marketing, if you want one on cars, whatever, there'll be a podcast about it. I mean, everybody knows about the Peter Crouch podcast, and he's got some really successful podcasts out there. Now, these are podcasts that appeal to people. They're funny, they're comedy podcasts, but they're podcasts for everything. And whatever sector you're working in, there will be a podcast that relates to that sector. So that means you can have an advert in that particular podcast, which means only people that will be hearing it are people that you want to target, people who are looking for those services or are looking for knowledge and experience. So you can be really, really highly targeted, which is why some podcast advertising can be a bit more expensive because it's so targeted.
Yeah.
But going back to your point, it's exactly that point. You're not wasting a single penny on people that aren't in your target audience.
Brilliant. Arup, I think you've really, really hit the nail on the head with that. And I'm just going to, once again, I would encourage you, go to systemize.me/free-stuff. Go and find out those those URLs, those websites that Arup mentioned. They will be in the vault. You can go there. You can pick up those valuable links and find out just how quickly and easily you can create an advert like Arup has just described to you. I'm going to back up what he's saying. I've been doing some sort of helping people launch their own podcast just recently. And when you look at the number of blogs there are in the world, and yet there are so few podcasts, and blogs are something that I know every web expert tells me, you must have a blog, you must have a blog. If you've got a blog, but you haven't got a podcast, you've missed out on a huge section of potential audience. I happen to have to attend, not because I was doing something else there, but I was attending an event recently in the middle of Derby, which was around the train industry. And there were no less than 12 YouTube and podcast people there, all creating podcasts about the trains that they were seeing. So there are some really huge audiences for these people. If they hadn't expected there to be a huge audience for their stuff, they wouldn't have been there. So go think about it. Go have a look at what you can do with podcasts. Look at what you can do with an advert to promote your stuff on a podcast, and get out there and do it. Arup, I've got to thank you for what you've just said. I think it's brilliant stuff, and really, really appreciate you coming on and spending a few minutes with us.
Thank you, Stuart. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for the opportunity.
No problem. If you'll excuse me, I'm just going to now encourage people to subscribe to this podcast and website. Go to, once again, to systemize.me/subscribe. It's a simple form. It asks you for two things: your first name and your email address. And every week you'll get an email from me telling you who's coming up on this, so that you can join live on LinkedIn or YouTube and actually get the sort of valuable free advice from experts such as Arup. We don't have people on here who have got something really valuable to say. So if you want to listen to more people like Arup who've got really valuable free advice for you and really will help get your business motoring, come and subscribe at systemize.me/subscribe. Arup, thank you very much. Thank you for indulging me for a few minutes in making my own little self-promotion there. It's not an advert. Maybe I need to start thinking about one of those as well. But thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Stuart.